Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Leila Daneshmandi. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Connecticut, and I'm also the co-founder and chief operating officer of Encapsulate, a medtech company in precision diagnostics for personalized cancer therapy. The current process in clinic today to choose a chemotherapy drug for cancer patients is based on trial and error, where the oncologist will choose a cancer drug based on the type of cancer and what's worked well in previous patients. But with this method, most chemotherapy cycles fail. Patients have to undergo multiple rounds of chemotherapy with different drugs that on average take 6 cycles, last more than 15 months, and cost more than $150,000. With each ineffective, unnecessary round of chemotherapy, the patient's chance for finding treatment becomes progressively lower. There's a higher risk of developing drug resistance. There's a higher risk of metastasis. And in a quarter of the cases, when a patient passes away, it's because of the side effects of chemotherapy itself that has killed the patient. In the treatment planning process today, when the patient's biopsy is taken, it's sent to pathology to determine if it's cancerous or not. If so, the oncologist will plan a treatment regimen and administer chemotherapy to the patients. The patient undergoes chemo for a couple of weeks, and after that, their response to the chemo will be evaluated. This process happens multiple times. This process happens on average 6 different times for each patient. And what if there was a way to only give the most effective treatment to the patient from the very beginning? At Encapsulate, we've developed an automated, patent-protected tumor-on-a-chip system where we can go the cancer patient's cells outside the body as microtumors in their native state. We take the cells from a small portion of the patient's biopsy when they're first diagnosed with cancer, grow the cells outside the body in their native state, and then we can test all the possible chemotherapy drugs on the patient to determine the most effective drug from the beginning. The oncologist can order a test from us once they have a patient. We'll run the assays with the different drugs that the oncologist wants to screen, and we'll generate a report back to them as a clinical consultation lab diagnostic test so that they can make a more informed decision. Our biochip allows us to create hundreds of miniature microcopies from the patient's tumors. These are replicates of the patient's own tumor outside the body, and then we're able to perform actual functional assays in real time with any type of drug at any different combination or concentration. And then we can deliver the insights back to the oncologist. This will, on average, reduce over 10 months in treatment times. It will reduce over $100,000 in direct chemotherapy-related costs, and of course, save countless number of lives. We perform all of this in 7 days, which does not impact the treatment length. To make our technology more adaptable for clinical implementation, we've been working to automate the whole system through a partnership with NASA. We were featured in the Wall Street Journal for our work on this, and we've already sent some experiments up to space that we're analyzing results now. We're also in queue for a $4 million grant from NASA once funds and budget become available. This is our team, my co-founder and I, Armin. We founded the company when we were both PhD students in biomedical engineering at the University of Connecticut. We have expertise in cancer medicine, therapy, and tissue regeneration, and we also both have master's degrees in global entrepreneurship. Dr. Brett Shipper, the Chief of Surgical Oncology at Hartford Healthcare, is our Chief Medical Officer, and Dr. Joel Levin, the Founding Director of UConn's Colon Cancer Prevention Program, is our Chief Strategy Officer. We also have an amazing team of advisors that help us in different aspects of business development, scientific, and clinical matters. And speaking of clinical matters, these are the results of a retrospective clinical study that we performed on colorectal cancer patients. We've done 2 so far, 1 prospective and 1 retrospective. With this study, it's interesting. These are patient samples from 5 to 10 years ago, where the patients underwent chemotherapy. with different drugs and different cycles, and we had access to those clinical outcomes. We were blind to the results, and we had the biopsies, which we grew in our system, and we performed the testing with different types of drugs. And we saw that what we see in our device in terms of how the patients respond to these different drugs is an exact representation of what had happened 5 to 10 years ago clinically. And so this is the basis for us to move forward with performing a prospective study, which I'll speak about in a couple of short minutes. We have multiple paths to generate revenue, and we're planning to pursue them in phases. Initially, this will be a lab diagnostic test through partnerships with healthcare systems, which will be regulated by CMS and CLIA. Physicians will be able to order tests and have the results back to them through folks that we hire at the CLIA labs at the hospitals. In addition to the CLIA cleared lab, further down the road will include a direct sales model with device SaaS and licensing through partnerships with larger entities. Our initial focus is on colorectal and pancreatic cancer. Although our technology is applicable to any type of solid tumor, we've chosen these two based on the high mortality rates, the complications in decision-making for the right drug, and the value that choosing the most effective drug would bring to the patient and to the healthcare system. With just focusing on these two, right now, our market is over $4 billion. And we offer several competitive advantages over other companies who are trying to personalize cancer therapy, mainly from a technological standpoint and also a clinical standpoint. None of these companies perform functional testing on 3D microtumors that are patient-derived. We're able to replicate the behavior of cancer patient cells outside the body and then screen it against any type of drug within the NCCN guidelines or even drugs in clinical trials that the oncologist may want to try. Once we grow our patient pool with more data, we also plan to incorporate AI and ML models for further predictions. We founded the company in 2019. We showed the proof of concept and then moved towards the lab scale. We've performed 2 clinical studies with Hartford Healthcare and Axial Biobank, and we've been able to raise over $2.2 million. Most of that is non-dilutive funding. Over 1.8 of that is through grants, most notably through an NSF SBIR Phase 1, and NASA SBIR Phase 1, and a Technology and Space Prize from the International Space Station. And we also had our patent that was issued this summer. And this is where we are today. We're raising 1.5 million in a Seed Plus round to run a large-scale prospective pilot clinical study on pancreatic cancer patients. This will allow us to validate the value propositions, but also publish papers, engage KOLs, and importantly, build out a medical economic model on the exact cost savings that a device like Encapsulate could have for the healthcare system. Importantly, this would help us get to revenue. We would be able to start commercialization in 2 years through this pilot program with hospitals through the LDT service model that I mentioned. This is more details on the financial objectives. We have 1.1 million of the round committed. Some of the funds have been wired in as well, but we're looking to close the round with the last third of the round. And I would appreciate any connections if anyone knows anyone who would potentially be interested in technology like ours. And we're also always looking for partners, oncologists, pathologists, or experts in reimbursement or regulatory that we could potentially build partnerships with. So I would appreciate any connections to anyone in those spaces as well. And with that, I'd like to thank you for listening to me today, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.